You are being harvested right now, not by some distant corporation or algorithm, but by your own need to feel something. Every notification you check, every mindless scroll through chaos, every moment you fill the silence. You are feeding the machine that keeps you tired, exhausted, reactive. You think you are living, but, well, you are being metabolized. In 1845, a man named Henry David Thoreau walked into the woods with an axe and built a 10 by 15-foot cabin, no running water. No neighbors, no distractions. Everyone called it retreat, escape. Madness. They were wrong. Thoreau was waging war, not with weapons, but with subtraction. He understood what Niccolò Machiavelli knew 5 centuries earlier. The man who needs nothing cannot be controlled. The man who wants nothing cannot be manipulated. Thoreau became ungovernable by becoming boring. Boredom was his secret weapon. Silence was his conquest. By the end of this, you will understand the mechanism, the exact psychological shift that transforms boredom from weakness into a weapon. But I must warn you, this will feel wrong. Your brain will resist. Because you have been trained since birth to associate emptiness with failure, we are going to perform surgery on that belief. The question is, are you tired enough to let me? Your amygdala, that ancient reptilian structure buried deep in your brain, it craves unpredictable rewards like a starving animal hunting in the dark. This is not a metaphor. This is biology, and it is being weaponized against you every single day. Social media platforms, streaming services, news feeds, they all operate on what behavioral psychologists call variable reinforcement schedules. You know this mechanism. It is the same one that makes slot machines addictive. You pull the lever, sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose, but you never know when. So you keep pulling. Your phone is a slot machine in your pocket. Every time you check it, you are gambling. Will there be a message? Will someone have liked your post? Will there be news? The unpredictability floods your system with dopamine. Not because of what you find, but because of the uncertainty itself. Thoreau saw this trap 180 years before smartphones existed. He called it differently back then. He called it noise, but the mechanism was identical. Newspapers, social obligations, town gossip, visitors demanding his attention. Each one a little dopamine hit, each one training his brain to look outward for stimulation instead of generating it from within. So he did something radical. He eliminated external triggers entirely. No newspapers delivered to his door, no social calendar to maintain. No gossip to consume. He starved the beast. And here is what happened. His brain, desperate for dopamine, had no choice but to adapt. It began generating meaning internally. Watching ants became fascinating. Observing ice melt became profound. Reading the same book 3 times revealed new layers. This is the mechanism they do not tell you. Your brain will produce the neurochemicals it needs. The question is, will you let it feast on junk food delivered by algorithms? Or will you force it to cook its own meals? This is the dopamine inversion. You must apply it. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control, it operates on a finite energy budget. Think of it like a fuel tank. Every decision you make, every choice you weigh, every option you consider, it drains that tank drop by drop. Most people do not understand this. They think more is better. More opportunities, more connections, more experiences, more options. They accumulate until their cognitive fuel tank is bone dry, and then they wonder why they cannot focus on what actually matters. This is decision fatigue. This is ego depletion. And it is not weakness, it is physics. Thoreau understood what the ancient Chinese philosopher Laozi wrote in the Tao Te Ching 2,000 years earlier. Laozi said, "We shape clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that makes it useful. We build walls and doors for a room, but it is the empty space within that we actually live in. The usefulness is in what is not there." Thoreau applied this principle ruthlessly. He did not add complexity to his life, he burned it like fuel. He eliminated social obligations. He rejected fashion and its endless cycling of trends. He ate the same simple foods. He owned 2 chairs, one for solitude, one for friendship. That was it, while everyone else was paralyzed by the paradox of choice. Thoreau had converted options into focus. He took all those decision points, all that mental leakage, and he sealed the tank. This freed him to spend his cognitive energy on depth instead of breadth. Here is what they will not tell you. Optionality is not wisdom. Keeping your options open is not strategic thinking. It is cowardice disguised as flexibility. It is fear of commitment wearing the mask of smart planning. Thoreau chose his lane and deleted everything else. He weaponized emptiness. He made space for what mattered by violently removing what did not. This is how you conquer. Not by adding force, but by removing everything they can use against you. This is the subtraction doctrine. You must burn your options like kindling. Your nervous system, it adapts. This is called hedonic adaptation, and it is one of the most sinister mechanisms controlling your life right now. Your brain adjusts to whatever pleasure level you expose it to, then raises the threshold. You need more to feel the same. This is not psychology, this is neurobiology. Think about it. Your first coffee of the day used to feel amazing. Now you need 3 just to feel normal. Your first relationship felt electric. Now, now you swipe through faces like a catalog feeling nothing. The mechanism is identical. Your baseline rises, your capacity for joy shrinks. Capitalism depends on this biological treadmill. They need you numb. They need you chasing the next hit, the next purchase, the next experience, always running but never arriving. Because if you ever stopped and felt satisfied, the entire system collapses. Thoreau saw through this. He did something most people consider insane. He deliberately lowered his baseline through sensory deprivation. He reduced stimulation to almost nothing. Plain food, simple shelter, minimal human contact, long stretches of silence. And here is what happened. His nervous system recalibrated downward. A sunrise became ecstasy. The sound of rain on his roof became symphony. Watching a hawk circle overhead became theater. He resensitized himself while everyone else was numbing themselves into obedience. This is the inversion they fear most. Because a man who can feel profound joy from a simple walk in the woods, that man cannot be sold anything. That man is not chasing. That man is not consuming. That man has escaped the cage. You are overstimulated to the point of numbness. Your threshold is so high that real life feels flat. Thoreau proved you can reverse it. Subtract stimulation. Starve the beast. Watch your sensitivity return. This is the stimulation ceiling. You must lower it deliberately. Your brainstem, the most primitive part of your neural architecture, it fears one thing above all else: resource scarcity. This fear makes you vulnerable. It makes you controllable. Because anyone who can threaten your comfort, your security, your resources, they own you. This is leverage. And the state, corporations, other people, they all use it. Thoreau understood this at a level most people never reach. In 1849, he refused to pay his poll tax. It was a protest against slavery and the Mexican War. The state arrested him, threw him in jail. And here is where the story gets interesting. They expected him to break, to comply, to pay the tax and apologize. Instead, Thoreau sat in that cell completely at peace. Because they had no leverage over him, he needed almost nothing. His cabin cost him $28 to build. His food came from a small garden. He owned no property they could seize. He had no career they could destroy. He had no dependencies. The state could imprison his body, but they could not threaten him. This is the Machiavellian inversion that changes everything. The less you require, the more dangerous you become. Most people are trapped by their needs. The mortgage, the car payment, the lifestyle, the status. They must comply because they have built a cage of dependencies around themselves. They call it success. But it is actually bondage. Thoreau proved the opposite path. Radical minimalism is not deprivation, it is armor. When you need nothing they can take, you become untouchable, ungovernable, free. Silence is not weakness, silence is conquest. When you refuse to react, you win. Your dependencies are their weapons against you. Every unnecessary need is a chain. Every requirement is a vulnerability. This is the refusal protocol. You must eliminate leverage points systematically. Your anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain that monitors for conflict and discomfort, it interprets waiting as pain, literally. The same neural pathways that process physical discomfort light up when you are forced to sit still with nothing to do. This is why boredom feels intolerable. But here is what they discovered in the marshmallow test. You know this experiment. Children, 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallow later. The children who succeeded, they did not just resist temptation through willpower. That is not how it works. They reframed the experience. They turned waiting into a game. They examined the marshmallow like scientists. They sang songs. They transformed boredom from torture into curiosity. This is cognitive reframing, and it is a skill. Thoreau applied this at a master level. He spent hours watching ants war with each other in the dirt. He observed ice formations on the pond. He studied the behavior of a single bird for an entire afternoon. To everyone else, this looked like madness. Wasted time, boredom. But Thoreau had calibrated differently. He treated monotony like weight training for attention. Each moment of apparent nothingness was repetition in the gym. He was building tolerance. He was strengthening his capacity to find depth in simplicity. While everyone else was developing addiction to constant stimulation, Thoreau was developing mastery over his own attention. He could focus on anything for as long as necessary. He could sit in silence without discomfort. He could wait without anxiety. This is the skill nobody teaches: boredom tolerance. The ability to reframe discomfort as opportunity. to see waiting not as punishment, but as training ground. Your phone has destroyed this capacity. Every gap filled, every silence invaded, every moment of potential boredom medicated with content. This is the boredom calibration. You must rebuild tolerance through deliberate exposure. Your hippocampus, the seahorse-shaped structure responsible for memory and spatial navigation, it stores every open loop as background cognitive load, every unmade decision, every pending choice, every option you are keeping available. Each one sits there, draining your working memory like applications running in the background of a computer. Psychologist Barry Schwartz proved this with brutal clarity. He called it the paradox of choice. More options do not create more freedom, they create paralysis. They create anxiety. They create regret. Because every choice you make, you are also choosing what to reject. And your brain treats rejection as loss. Thoreau understood this instinctively. He took his life and he closed doors, violently, permanently. He did not keep options open. He did not hedge his bets. He did not maintain backup plans. He reduced his entire existence to essentials, then he burned everything else in what I call the choice furnace. One profession, writing and observation. One location, Walden Pond. One philosophy, deliberate simplicity. He converted optionality into fuel for focus, while everyone else was maintaining dozens of potential paths, keeping connections warm, preserving possibilities. Thoreau had committed fully to a singular direction. Here is what cowards call this. They call it limiting yourself. They call it closing doors. They call it narrow-minded. But here is the truth they cannot face. Keeping options open is not wisdom. It is fear of commitment disguised as strategic thinking. Every option you refuse to close is leaking your mental energy. Every backup plan is dividing your attention. Every safety net is preventing you from committing fully to the path that matters. Thoreau proved the alternative. Burn the bridges, close the exits, eliminate the optionality. When you have one path, and one path only, you stop wasting energy on decision maintenance. You stop second-guessing. You move. This is the choice furnace. You must burn optionality for singularity, ruthlessly. Your default mode network, this is the constellation of brain regions that activate when you are not focused on external tasks. When you are daydreaming, when you are letting your mind wander. Neuroscientist Marcus Reichler discovered this accidentally in 2001, and it changed everything we understand about creativity. Here is what he found. The default mode network is where insights happen, where connections form between seemingly unrelated ideas, where original thought is born. But it only activates during unfocused rest, during mental whitespace, during what appears to be doing nothing. Modern life has declared war on this network. Every gap is filled. Every commute has a podcast. Every meal has a screen. Every moment of potential boredom is medicated with content. You are optimizing productivity, but you are killing the mechanism that produces anything worth producing. Thoreau protected emptiness like territory. While his neighbors filled every hour with labor and social obligation and town business, Thoreau defended vast stretches of unstructured time. He walked for hours with no destination. He sat by the pond with no agenda. He stared at the ceiling of his cabin, watching shadows move. To everyone else this looked like laziness, wasted time, privilege. They were wrong. Thoreau was cultivating the conditions for his default mode network to operate. He was defending the mental white space where Walden, his masterpiece, could actually emerge. Here is the paradox they cannot accept. Doing nothing produces everything that matters. The breakthrough insight does not come during the grind. It comes during the break, the walk, the silence, the shower, the moment you stop trying. But you have to actually stop. You have to leave gaps. You have to resist the compulsion to fill every second with input and stimulation and productivity. Thoreau knew what we have forgotten. The mind needs fallow periods, like soil needs rest between harvests. You cannot extract continuously without depletion. You cannot fill every gap without destroying the space where original thought grows. This is the default mode resurrection. You must defend emptiness as sacred ground. Violently. So where does this leave you, sitting here? Exhausted, overstimulated, believing you need to do more when the surgery required is subtraction. Thoreau did not give you an action plan. He gave you a diagnostic. He showed you that the trap is not out there. It is in your inability to sit still, your addiction to feeling busy, your terror of being alone with what remains when you stop performing. Here is the question you must ask yourself. What would be left if you subtracted everything you do out of habit, fear, or imitation? Not what you want left. What would actually remain? For most people, the answer is terrifying. Nothing. They have built entire identities on borrowed desires and rented ambitions. They are performing a life that was never theirs to begin with. Thoreau went to Walden because he knew. Most men live lives of quiet desperation. They die with the music still inside them because they were too afraid of the silence required to hear it. They fill their calendars to avoid the confrontation. They stay busy to escape the question. This is not about going to the woods. This is about strategic retreat as a military principle. You do not abandon the battlefield. You withdraw to higher ground where you cannot be reached. Thoreau made himself boring to everyone who needed him reactive. He became invisible to systems that feed on engagement. And in that invisibility, he found what Carl Jung would later call integration, the shadow and the light reconciled through voluntary deprivation. But I must tell you, the real enemy, it is not the algorithms or the corporations or the culture. It is the part of you that knows this is true and will do nothing. The part that will close this video, feel momentarily inspired, then return to the exhaustion, because at least exhaustion is familiar. At least the cage is comfortable. Thoreau was not special. He was simply honest and stubborn. Stubborn enough to measure the cost of everything in life instead of money. Stubborn enough to sit with boredom until it transformed into clarity. Stubborn enough to say no when every pressure demanded yes. Most people will not apply this. They will keep their calendars full and their minds empty. They will die in the hallway arguing about which room to enter. That is not you. You are different. You must be, or you would not still be here. The question is whether you are different enough to actually subtract one thing today, to sit with boredom for 10 minutes without filling it, to say no to something your fear demands you say yes to. This is only what I can show publicly. There are mechanisms of psychological warfare I cannot discuss on YouTube without being censored. Those exist behind the join button. Most will not click it. That is the point. Thoreau conquered an entire system with one secret weapon they never saw coming: boredom. Silence. Strategic emptiness. Subscribe if you have not. I will see you in the shadows.